Hey everybody, this is Francesco Abbruzzino with the Rogue Rant or Uncensored Report. Ever since WikiLeaks came out, they disclosed additional information regarding the refugee crisis in Syria and the fact that it is indeed fueled by competing gas pipelines, which started the whole war over there. It's something I've been saying for a while, something you do not hear out there in major media. And I wanted to cover that just a little bit. You know, you get images out there, that poor 3-year-old Syrian boy or Kurdish boy who washed up dead in the Mediterranean shores. His family was attempting to flee the war-torn area of Syria. He grabbed a lot of attention when the person went over. He grabbed them up out of the water, and everybody was really upset over this heart-wrenching crisis that's unfolding over there in the Middle East. It's ignited a conversation that was probably needed about the ongoing strife and instability that is driving the people from their homes from countries like Syria, Yemen, Iraq, a bunch of the Middle Eastern countries that are having these issues. Libya, another one. And it brought international attention to the inhumane treatment that a lot of these refugees have been going through as they try to flee for safety. In Syria, you have foreign powers out there, and they sunk this once great nation into a nightmare with the civil war, foreign invasion, terrorism. It's all out there. And the Syrian people are in this impossible position where they're out there having to choose between living in this war zone or taking off and becoming a refugee. When they take off, they're being targeted by ISIS. They're being targeted by Syrian governments in their crackdown. They finally make it to Europe, and they're getting, they're given some food, water, and all that stuff. And now they're faced with a hostile public because they will get all this stuff for free, and a lot of people in these other countries, the United States, Germany, everywhere, are saying, wait a second, we're poor, we're broke. Why aren't you looking out for your own people? Why aren't you vetting these Syrian refugees that are coming to ensure that ISIS has not infiltrated them? And these are legitimate concerns that a lot of people in Europe, Western Europe, America have in regards to these refugees. But what a lot of people are missing here is truly what's going on. You get all these refugees, and a lot of them are being taken in primarily by Jordan. Jordan's just taken in a ton of them. A lot of other Middle Eastern countries are helping, getting involved. However, a lot of Gulf Arab nations aren't. Even Iran is getting involved there. But countries like Saudi Arabia, they have tents set up for up to 1 million refugees, air-conditioned units and everything. They haven't taken in one refugee. Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates. They've provided refuge for 0 refugees that are fleeing. Why? Especially what's really concerning here is because a lot of them are involved in this proxy war there. And so I understand a conversation needs to take place about the issues that are going on over there. But what a lot of people are missing is why it started. Media isn't talking about, they're not reporting accurately about the breakdown on what really occurred over there and what we're seeing and how this whole war came about. How you got to ask yourself, the demonstrations. How did demonstrations of hundreds of protesters demanding change in Syria 4 years ago devolve into this heavy sectarian civil war that we're seeing now? With the extremism that they're seeing now haunting them, the refugee crisis. You know, the media will sit there and point fingers at Bashar Assad, the president. Political analysts will sit there and call for airstrikes against ISIS. We need to get it under control, they'll say. But this civil war isn't about religion. It's about gas. And what you're seeing up on the screen, it's about pipeline. I once learned this 4 years ago from one of my clients that is Syrian. And he told me, Frank, it's not about sectarian races, this division. It's about a pipeline. And I started researching it. WikiLeaks also brought new revelations to it. How the CIA was thrown in there trying to overthrow the Syrian government through instigating the civil strife that we've seen. The partnership that the United States had with Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, to go out there and use sectarianism to divide Syria between the Shiite and Sunnis. which we saw sweeping across the nation. But it's not about religion. These foreign nations, they created this group they called the Group of Friends of Syrian People. And their agenda was to divide and conquer and wreak havoc in Syria in order to overthrow Assad. And the truth about the agenda was never put out there. Media never really covered it. The true agenda to hijack Syria's revolt quickly became evident, though, when talking heads got it out there and they started inserting Syrians' alliance with Iran as a threat to their security, to the threat of the interests of the United States. And then you got to look at the timing. The timing that the coalition and the meddling in Syria came immediately on the heels of an Iran-Iraq-Syria gas pipeline that was to be built between 2014 and 2016 from Iran. And this would have diverted a lot of the gas, or this would have diverted a lot of the fuel from Russia that's going over to Europe, which is what the United States ultimately wanted. So it's about oil, gas, and pipelines. And so you had these tensions that were building with Russia, the U.S., and the European Union. And they said, how can we do this? How can we build this pipeline to stop relying so heavily upon Russia? And they came up with this concept. But Assad, he refused to sign the proposed agreement. He told Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and all those guys, get lost. Jordan and all of them. He said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not up for it. And that's when this whole thing started. This is when this whole divide and conquer came about. The call for regime change. France, Britain, U.S., Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Israel, the Friends of Syria called for an overthrow of Bashar Assad because he refused to sign this gas pipeline. The funds, the arms flowing into Syria to feed these so-called moderate rebels started flowing. Next thing you know, we got this humanitarian crisis. So the Syrian government responded with a heavy hand. And since Syria is religiously diverse, the Friends of Syria decided to push the sectarianism as the divide and conquer strategy to overthrow Assad. Although the war was being sold as some kind of publicly as a fight between the Sunnis and Shiites, it's not really that. You know, you got Sunni groups like ISIS, like al-Nusra, the Free Syrian Army, which they say is moderate, and they're not moderate. And they indiscriminately were targeting Syria's Sunnis, Shiites, Christians, and Jews. So it's not sectarianism. The army itself, the Syrian army itself, is 80% Sunnis, which indicates the true agenda here was not religious. It was more political about the gas pipeline and our meddling in it. So what we need to do is get straight what's going on there, and that it's not about religion. I mean, it's convenient to say that with Arabs, Muslims killing each other, to frame the conflict as sectarian. I get that. But the truth is that it's about the gas pipeline. But if that truth was presented to the public with the perspective that this war was all about economic interests, most people would not have supported it. They would have protested it if it were presented as such. And so the government, the CIA, carefully took this rhetoric, they carefully molded it and crafted it so that the lies sounded more truthful and made the murdering of all these innocent people, soldiers and civilians, everybody, more respectable. And the people in the Middle East who at once stood united and strong together against foreign meddling, exploitation, colonialism, and all that stuff has broken apart. Today, the Middle East is a torn-up society. It's been manipulated. And all this due to plans to gain oil and gas access by pitting people against each other, basing it solely on the fact that it's all religious. Let's sell the fact that it's all about religion and ISIS. And this was for a push in energy. And the people that are suffering most are the refugees in Syria. They're fleeing en masse. And then ISIS is hiding in them. They've hijacked it and exploited this refugee crisis. And now they're wreaking havoc throughout the country, throughout the globe. The risk, you know, these Syrians, they're out there, they're risking their lives, putting life jackets on kids, hoping to get hope somewhere else. Many, I saw an expose about a lot of the Syrians going over to Lebanon and turning to prostitution. It's a shame what's going on there, but people need to wake up and realize that it was the CIA and these friends of Syria working together to get the pipeline because Assad refused them. Same thing happened in Ukraine when we overthrew that government because the president refused to join in on the European Union and sign off on that. This has been Frankie Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report.